Advisory Committee, the De La Guerra Plaza Advisory Committee of February 11th, 2022. And can we start with a roll call?
Starting with roll, we have Chair Sneddon.
Here.
Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Here.
Commissioner Drury. Commissioner House.
I'm here.
Commissioner Lodge.
Here.
Commissioner Longstreet.
Here.
Councilmember Harmon. Commissioner McGill.
Here.
Committee Member Peterson.
Here.
And Committee Member Edelman. That's it for roll today.
Thank you so much. And then, Mr. Hess, do we have any announcements or changes to the agenda?
The two announcements, or the one announcement that I would like to make is just that we have two new members. We have Sheila Lodge representing the Planning Commission, taking Barrett Reed's place. And we have Kathy McGill, who is the chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission and is taking Mr. Perry's place. So welcome to the new members.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And then let us start with our agenda items. First, I guess I'll lead first with there was a presentation to Historic Landmarks Commission, and that's mainly what we'll be talking about today, the areas that we are in pretty close agreement and some of the areas that may need refinement. And did you want to, Mr. Hess, go through the whole presentation and then discuss, or did you want to discuss item by item?
Chair Sneddon, it would be wonderful to be able to get through the entire presentation. It's actually a pretty brief presentation today, so we really want to get through it, and then we can go into public comment, followed by the discussion of the items. That would be great.
Thank you so much. All yours.
Great, thank you. And Leif, if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen and we can get the presentation going. Great. Well, again, welcome and thank you for making the time today on such short notice. And we apologize again for the technical difficulties of getting everyone on board this morning. So thanks for your patience. To really echo what Chair Sneddon said and to set the tone for the day, today's meeting is in response to the HLC meeting that we had a few weeks ago, where on appearance, it seemed to not go very well. But in evaluating the actual content, there were more areas in which we agree than disagree. So today's agenda will be about outlining the areas that have been generally agreed upon, but still need refining, and then go through some options for those areas in which we disagree with HLC. So next slide, please. So here's our agenda for today. Again, we're going to review HLC input and comments, and then we're going to go through some of the areas for refining the design, the arcade, restrooms, the quatrefoil and water feature, and our position on grass. And then at the end, we're going to be asking for direction from the committee on how to proceed. Next slide, please. So normally, I don't think it's wise to actually read the slides since you can all read, but because this is so critical, I'd like to do that. So on the left column, we have the areas in which we generally agree with HLC. So closing the plaza and De La Guerra Street to traffic, making this a pedestrian-only space with level surface from building to building. We agree that there's a need for restrooms. We're going to be integrating arts, historic components, and cultures into the space. We'll be enhancing the City Hall landscape over on the Anacapa side. We will have underground trash enclosures. We will have trees and tree wells with seating at the edges, and we will have a vastly improved lighting plan. And the four areas in which we aren't so much in agreement are on the right. We have the arcade feature, and we will be talking through multiple design options for that today. We have the surface materials selection that is really we're having a future subcommittee on that. So we're not going to address that today, but that is definitely one of those areas we need to have resolution on. Restrooms should be located in Stork Placita with a shed roof design, and we will go through that. And then the Quattro, which is also the water feature. So next slide, please. So based on feedback from the HLC, we as a design team went back to the beginning of why the arcade was introduced in the first place, and really what is the purpose of the structure. So here are the principles that originally guided and continue to guide the design team on the arcade. First and foremost, the idea is to enclose the plaza and screen the parking lot. We want it to provide a beautiful backdrop for events. We would like to provide a permanent stage for performances, speeches, and the like. We don't want to infringe on the historic wall that is adjacent to City Hall. And we really want to provide a flexible space to help activate the edge of the plaza. That could be people watching, vendors, discourse, and really it's also a great spot for entertainment and a space for art and cultural representation. So I'm going to hand it off to Leif, and he can walk us through the design modifications that we've made.
Thanks, Brad. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you for the first time in 2022. You'll be pleased to know this is a much shorter presentation than our most recent ones. We're just going to focus in, as Brad said, on a couple of key elements, which I'm going to run through now. The first is the arcade, then we'll move on to the restrooms, the water feature, and we're going to wrap it up with a slide on the topic of the grass. So the arcade, if you recall, this is the last iteration of the arcade, and this is what was presented to HLC, and there was quite a lot of discussion on this particular feature. Questions were raised about the scale and size, whether or not it was too far into the plaza. So in other words, its horizontal location in the plaza, and some questions about its architectural styling. So what we've done is we've tried to just come up with some quick studies of how we may start to address some of those concerns and still keep a feature there, which the entire design team feels very strongly that this is an important piece of the puzzle, because it really solidifies this edge that is otherwise a weak link to creating a beautiful space. We really believe strongly it needs something on this edge to finish the edge. So we're going to show you three options, and they're in no particular order of preference. But firstly, we want to show you some of the things we tried to achieve. Here's a little hand sketch of the area in question. The red pink dashed outline represents where the previous arcade sat in the plaza. That's what matches the renderings we just showed you. So it's a long arcade with a sort of a low stage projecting out from it in front, and it happened to be centered on the quatrefoil motif, which had the water feature in it. Today, the three options we're showing you are all a little smaller, and they can be pushed back towards the parking lot, which was one of the recurring comments that came up at HLC, was that a concern that it interfered too much with the plaza space itself. So that blue line is where we think we can slide the whole feature. There would be a little collateral damage there with the loss of another existing tree. And we still would like to leave a little space at the backside for some landscaping, and we do have some utility infrastructure that we want to conceal behind it as well. So that's kind of setting the stage for the three options. The first one, and we've chosen a different view of the space right now, because we felt like it was important to show it the context with the news press, how big that building is, and it helps to put this arcade feature into more context with the size and scale of the buildings surrounding it. We felt like this was an important view to show you. That's City Hall, just peeking on the left of your screen. So this is option A. This is a couple of changes that are obvious. One is it's a little shorter, and at the end, instead of another sort of row of columns and arches, there's a wall projecting out, which serves as a screen for a transformer on the backside, some utilities, perhaps some interpretation opportunity for that, for having some blank wall space. It has a shed roof on the two sort of wings, left and right of the center. That is in response to some suggestions to maybe try to draw a little more architectural inspiration from the old Harmer adobe, which sat kind of behind where this arcade is located. It had a shed roof porch feature on the front. So we've tried to reflect a little bit of that roof form instead of the hip roofs that we had previously. That's also consistent with the porch of the casa. That's not in this view, but that has a similar form, and you know, it's quite common in the surrounding vicinity, including the new restrooms that we're going to show you shortly. It does have windows on the back side, so it's still maintaining a sense of transparency. The next one is similar to what the previous proposal was, but it's been shortened at either end. Like one bay or one arch has been removed from either end, and it's truncated a little bit. And then there's a little scalloped wall you can just make out that at the end that sort of, it reflects some of the old scalloped walls that are around the plaza and that were there historically, that have since been removed. Because it's shorter on both ends, that enables us to be able to slide it back, which related to the site plan I showed you earlier. And then the third is shortening it again to 2 bays on either side, with some more opportunity for lower walls and some more landscaping around the ends. It's just a more compact footprint. Again, this would allow us to push it all the way back, while maintaining many of our goals for filling the gap, screening the parking lot, providing a backdrop for events and such. So that is, they're the 3 options we want to share with you today, to see if any of those resonate, or if they're heading in an approach that the group can support. And we'll come back to that later, but I'll keep going through. The next topic is the restrooms. One moment, please. Here we go. We shared with HLC a series of concept sketches similar to this one. This is the one that they generally preferred, which is, again, a simple shed roof form against the big blank wall along the edge of the placita. So just for orientation, I think you all know, but for the new folks, this is a view with the placita off to the left. So State Street would be down to the left, and then the plaza proper would be on the right. And this structure here is what's now the Ironworks business. So we're kind of matching similar roof pitches, and it would be a fairly simple plaster tile roof structure with some modest architectural detailing, but again, the message from the HLC was, don't make it overly elaborate or ornate, so keep it quite simple. The first portion of the building would be restrooms, and then the part off to the left would be a pump room for all the mechanical needs of the water feature. So that's kind of what's contained in it. There's a chance we may try to move it around, make it smaller. You know, we still have a lot of detail to figure out on that, but that's kind of the general form. And Brad, I don't know if you want to add in on anything to that.
I do. Just we're going to try and move it as far out toward the plaza, which would be in this view just to the right, coming out toward the ironworks edge as possible. We're checking roof lines and we want to make sure architecturally it makes sense. And I'd also just like to touch on the reasoning why we're proposing the restrooms be located in this location as opposed to behind the arcade in the parking lot, which was suggested at HLC. There are very few restrooms downtown right now for the public. So it is absolutely in the community's best interest for us to locate restrooms in the plaza. These restrooms need to be easily accessed both from the plaza and State Street. And they need to be put in a place where users will not only feel safe, but it needs to actually be safe. So it needs to be in a more visible space as a result. And safety is really key. We don't feel that putting it behind the arcade in the parking lot is a safe option, especially as you start getting into dusk or in the evening. They also need to be in a location where they can be easily found. That is definitely the placita. The needed utilities are more readily available at this location. And just as a reminder, these are self-cleaning facilities. So we should not face the same issues other public restrooms have in parks and in other areas of State Street. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, Brad. Okay, moving on to the next topic, which somewhat relates to that one because of its relationship to the mechanical needs and the mechanical room we just alluded to. The water feature has been talked about a lot. It's basically the design currently has it embedded in this quatrefoil motif, which is just shown at the bottom right there, which would be some sort of really a focused area of more decorative paving, given that the rest of the plaza is going to be fairly understated. That's the intent. The photo on the left is, we just wanted to try to dispel any misconceptions about what this feature is proposed to be. One of the public comments at the HLC referenced a park, and this is a photo of the actual park. It's in Southern California, and I think we just wanted to address that this is not what we are proposing to do. It's not going to be a playground with large overhead jets and thousands of people thronging to it. So just by way of couching this conversation, what we are proposing is something more akin to what's on the right, which is very low level bubblers that are interactive for young children, but it's not intended to be a playground of any sort. We do want people to engage with it, much like that, and it's a place where families can drop down and cool off a little bit on a hot day. The sort of coloured points on the right, it's really the purpose for us including it. As you recall, it's a way to bring young families to the space, which currently young families would have very little motivation for coming down and spending time there. Excuse me. And it does have a lot of benefits, like it's some visual interest. It provides some nice white noise and ambience. It'll look good. It'll be beautiful, and the cooling, which ties into the sort of adding to the experience that people would have in the space. So I don't want to belabor that point much more, but this is really just to say the reasons why it's there, and to just clarify what it is and what it isn't intended to be. And Brad, this is you.
Great, thanks, Leif. And just to put a button on the water feature, if you have questions with respect to health and safety, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have regarding how it's set up. So grass was also brought up at the HLC, and we wanted to address this head on because it's a really important topic. So again, at the risk of boring you to tears, and my apologies in advance, but I think it's important that we read this. So point number one is the city's landscape standards for water conservation require that the landscape area of non-residential projects be designed without the use of decorative turf and with 100% water-wise plants. The only exceptions would be for active recreation, such as sports fields. So that's the city's landscape standards for water conservation. Point two is the city's municipal green building policy states that the new and renovated city facilities will be designed without the use of decorative turf unless approved for recreational purposes. Those are consistent. Three, the water-wise landscaping is supported by the guidelines for the EPV landmark district and the historic resource design guidelines. So all 3 points are, this is consistent. We don't use decorative turf. So as a city, this is how we present grass to the public. Recycled water was brought up in terms of just being able to water the space if that's an issue, but it's not close. The closest water main is near Santa Barbara High School, about 3,370 linear feet away, and it would cost more than $700,000 to bring recycled water to the plaza. General rule that I've heard is about $1 million a mile for bringing that recycled water. So that is cost prohibitive. Grass requires water, maintenance, and time to regrow if after major events such as Fiesta. It's been estimated it takes about 3 months to regrow that grass with orange fencing around it, which makes it an inactive space. So based on the above, city administration, public works, parks and recreation, and community development will not support grass in this proposed design. So if we propose it in our PRT submittal, it's just going to get flagged saying we don't do grass. Additionally, not having grass was unanimously agreed upon by this advisory committee fairly early on. So just want to make sure that it's crystal clear. We are not proposing grass for this project. So last slide is, these are our goals. So really there's two. I'd like to start with the quatrefoil water feature because really this is a, are we in or are we out? The quatrefoil design can be with or without the water feature. We think it's great. Generally, the advisory committee has supported this all the way through. HLC agreed with us back in May when we had our joint work session. So we need to decide as a committee, are we supportive of this and will we stand behind this design and push forward with the water feature or not? The second one is we'd like to understand your preference for the arcade and talk through the different design features. Again, this was a quick study, so there are options within each of those that we can discuss, but that's what we're after as well. And that is it. So Chair Snedden.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. And do we have any questions before we hear public comment, or did we want to go to public comment if there is any?
Believe that's up to you. Which would you like to?
Do we have any public comment?
I do have a question.
Okay.
It would be nice if we could just cycle through option ABC of the arcade again, so we kind of have a visual of how the three stack up against each other.
Is there a question with that, Commissioner House?
Just that I would like to see ABC cycled through so we could see them.
And Commissioner McGill, did you have a question? Your hand is up?
Nope, I was muted. No, whenever it's the appropriate time, when I watched the HLC meeting video, there were some public comments raised that suggested that wherever water features exist, they've had to be shut off because of bad behaviors and contamination. So basically the HSC issues that Brad raised, I would like to hear some feedback on that.
Mr. Hess, did you want to answer to that one?
Yes, Chair Sneddon, I'd be happy to. And Commissioner McGill, the splash pads that have been shut down for health and safety reasons are really true splash pads like the picture showed, where people were bathing, brushing their teeth, and using it as a public shower. The problem with that type of contamination is that it just stays in the system. So what we're proposing is the small bubblers, which do not have that type of ability, but it's a pump system on a loop with a tank. And so the filtering is basically the water goes down into the system, is pumped back to the mechanical room, runs through a filter, and then it is pumped back to the tank and waiting to be used, and it is clean. So the idea is that on that loop system, you're not losing any water other than for evaporation, and the water is clean as it comes out and then is filtered before it comes back out again.
Thanks. And is there any chemical treatment, chlorine, anything like that?
I don't know all of the treatments, but my assumption is yes. My assumption is that it would be cleaned not only through filtering, but also chemically to make sure that it has the proper pH and alkaline and all the things that you'd want in that type of system.
Okay, thank you.
And Vice Chair Wiscombe, do you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I did have a question. Actually, I have a couple questions. On the arcade, I think it's option A, the one with the yeah, this wall that comes out here on the left side that we're seeing closest to City Hall, that's not mirrored on the other side, is it? I guess
Yes,
the question is, it is. So this is, okay. So it will be option A, symmetrical with that wall on both sides.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. And then my second question is, under the restrooms, you don't really need to go to the drawing, but we have what you call the pump room. And if there were no water feature, that room still exists, right? It's a mechanical room. Is that correct? So we would still need it.
So we haven't really gone there in terms of what that space could be used for, but my feeling is that if we do not have a water feature, we don't need a pump room, but it would be great to add another restroom or two. But that's also up for discussion.
Okay, but where will the equipment be stored? I mean, you have to have some sort of mechanical room, don't you, for not only restroom operation, but trash operation and everything else that it's going to house that. So is that pretty much the room? I mean, can we term that mechanical room? I don't want to dwell on this a long time. was curious.
I could maybe take a stab, Brad.
Great.
Thanks for the question, Vice Chair Wiscombe. The primary purpose of that room currently is directly related to the water feature. So if the water feature went away, that room could either go away, or we could find another use for it, like Brad alluded to, sort of more restrooms, maybe some general storage. There's no the primary purpose of it currently is the water feature, just to be clear. And then so there'd be an opportunity to maybe reimagine that space or shrink the size of the footprint or some combination thereof.
Okay, thank you for the answer to that. That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And do we have any members of the public who want to make comments?
Yes, we have one public comment at this time. Mary Louise, I see your hand is raised. I'm going to unmute you, and then you will unmute yourself, and you can begin to talk, and you have 2 minutes to speak.
Welcome, Ms. Days.
Thank you. Again, I am bringing up the topic of the state plaque marker at the head of Plaza de la Guerra. I have a background on it from public records and a book put out in 1990 by some colleagues of mine in the State Office of Historic Preservation. The Casa de la Guerra recognition goes back apparently to 1939 by a very early state committee. That committee was succeeded by the Advisory Committee and the State Historic Resources Commission. This plaque was placed at the time of the centennial of California's statehood in 1950. Its text is almost entirely about Plaza de la Guerra, and its name on the plaque is Plaza de la Guerra. The state has listed it for years as number 307. There is a reference to the casa at the end of the text, and the state's 1990 book renamed the listing as Casa de la Guerra because apparently of the early history of the recognition itself. But it does describe the plaque, and the plans have not shown this plaque being relocated satisfactorily. It should not be put away, far away, a half a block from the plaza itself, because the plans that were shown to HLC showed some memorial item at down near Anacapa Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Days. And I just want to be really clear. We haven't settled yet on locations of plaques. There are various plaques in the plaza as well. And maybe Mr. Hess could answer to that also, but I think it'll be very important that we get your input on the acceptable location of that plaque and the final design. Mr. Hess?
And Chair Sneddon, you are exactly correct. It is on our list of many things to make sure that proper attention is paid. Ms. Days, please hold tight. We understand the importance of this plaque as well as the other plaques that are in the plaza, and they will absolutely be treated not only respectfully but with honor.
And thank you for the attention to that. And we'll definitely get input for there. And then do we have another public comment, Mr. Kelly?
Yes, we have one more public comment. Dennis Thompson, I see that your hand is raised. I'm going to unmute you, and then you will unmute yourself and begin to talk. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Good morning, I'm Dennis Thompson, and some of you might recall I attended your first meeting or two that were held live at the council meeting, and then I watched many of the early meetings, and I was very pleased with the progress I saw happening. I particularly remember you struggling with this question of grass or no grass, and I think you made the right decision, obviously because of the maintenance and drought issue, but also the fact that most Latin American and European plazas that I am aware of don't have grass. They'll have some vegetation, but not grass. Grass is a Yankee invention. I don't think it's appropriate for De La Guerra Plaza. And on the fountain question, I think it's something that will enliven the space and have another reason to bring people there, because without a series of restaurants ringing the plaza, there isn't much reason to go there. And I think the fountain, or the water element, as you call it, would add an extra reason. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Madam Clerk, I see in the chat, John Kelly has a comment. Is that?
John Kelly, I'm going to unmute you, and then you'll unmute yourself and you'll begin to talk. You have 2 minutes.
This is John Kelly, architect. I commend all of you on your 3 years of hard work producing the current De La Guerra Plaza revitalization proposal. I support the goal of making the plaza a more attractive place for festivals and events, political rallies, concerts and entertainment, and leisure activities. In order to achieve this important goal, I believe 3 elements are essential. Number 1, removing the streets and curves from the plaza and De La Guerra Street to improve accessibility for all. Number 2, eliminating grass and installing level paving in the walkways and plaza to improve function and appearance and to reduce maintenance and water use. And number 3, installing a prominent feature that communicates our history of our indigenous, Hispanic, and Anglo cultures and is accessible to all. For example, with a 3-sided kiosk or some other design, because I really think that this is an opportunity to educate our citizens and our visitors about our history. So thanks for your consideration. Let's revitalize De La Guerra Plaza now.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. And do we have any other public comment?
I do not see any other public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you so much. So if everyone, since we're on Zoom now and have room for it, if everyone wants to have their cameras on, if you'd like to, you don't have to. And then when you're ready to speak, use the raise hand function, and then I can see you in the order that you're coming on. And I'll propose that we talk about these items one at a time and go through the order of what we really need to get through today is discussion of the arcade, discussion of the water feature, and then I would like to hear confirmation from this group about our position on the grass. I think that would be good to get a checkpoint from each of us that where we stand on moving forward with the proposal without grass. So if we could start with the arcade. We had the 3 options. And then of course, there's always an option of not having an arcade or not having that feature in that form. But option A had the slant roof. Option B was similar to previous, but shortened on both ends. And then option C was shortened even further. I wanted to confirm, to each of these options, we lose a mature tree. Is that correct? Mr. Hess?
Chair Sneddon, I can answer that. Are you seeing my screen again?
Yes.
Yeah, they to push the arcade back to roughly where the blue outline is would necessitate the removal of this dashed line here, which would be one of the existing trees.
Thank you. And that was in response to HLC comments to put it back in line with City Hall and not to sort of overpower City Hall, I think was.
Yeah, exactly. There was concern about how far it was intruding into the plaza.
So comments to the arcade. I can either go in order around, or if you'd like to raise your hand if you have comments on the direction. Commissioner Lodge.
Could we, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but could we just scroll through the options one more time, please?
Certainly. Okay, so just not to belabor the point, that's what it was previously, which was 4 bays on either side. And then the new sort of sketches are this one, which has 3 bays, shed roof, and this kind of wall extension out on the end to meet some of our programmatic needs. This is more akin to the previous proposal, but shortened by 1 bay on either end. That's B. And C. truncating it by 2 bays on either end. So it's much smaller in, much shorter in length. And then the stage would also scale down a little bit proportionately. So that's the 3 options.
Thank you. Commissioner Lodge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I strongly prefer this version that's up now, the smallest one. It was a nice design for the original proposal, but it was just too big. It overwhelmed. It took up too much space there in terms of its relationship and its purpose for its presence in the plaza. So I like version C. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Howe.
I would agree with that. And I spent some time walking around the plaza the other day and imagining that. And I mean, it's been clear all along that it was just not working, and it returns each time with a little modification, but it never really seemed to hit the sweet spot. And I think we're on our way to a nice compromise here, making it much smaller so that it can be pushed back, because it was just too much of an imposition, and it was competing with City Hall and the News Press building. As far as the architectural design of the 3 options, I prefer A with the shed roof, not so much because that it echoes the old Adobe, but I think it's just a simpler structure. And I think I would also prefer one without the center arched element. Option B and C just look like mini City Halls to me. And I think that needs to be a departure from City Hall. So I'm liking the shed roof option. It needs some work, but I think if it were as small as option C, that would be desirable. And we really need to have a discussion about how we can get more landscaping behind it. I know there's probably a consideration of archaeological remnants, and that will need more study, because there's been an archaeological report for an earlier proposal for restrooms in that area, but it was limited in its area. And clearly, if foundations for this arcade are being built where it's currently showing, that needs to be considered if that's interfering with archaeological remains. And if it's not, then perhaps there's also the possibility of removing 1, 2, 3 parking spaces back there and having some substantial trees, because I think it's, I agree with the concept that we need something that defines the perimeter of the plaza, and it needs to be more opaque. If you're just seeing through things to parked cars, I don't think it's entirely accomplishing its objective. So I think this smaller arcade and more landscaping is key, and I think it's on its way to something that the HLC could likely support.
Thank you, Commissioner House. And Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Commissioner House. I like C for the fact that I think we have an opportunity to provide some more substantial landscape. And also I appreciate the fact that we now have the News Press building in view. I think that gives a really good perspective. But I also like the shed roof. So I think, the smaller structure, it does create an edge that I think we need. And obviously it has a function that I think the plaza, historically has had, and it just provides a place for that. But so I guess I like the smaller structure, but again, I'm with Commissioner House. I'd like a shed roof, and I think that an opportunity to provide some substantial landscaping behind it is important. And I actually like the idea if we could lose a couple parking spaces and get some trees behind there. I think that would be really quite lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there definitely is opportunity for more landscaping in there as this progresses. I don't see other hands, but I do want to make sure. Oh, Dr. Peterson, yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I think we could have a really beautiful plaza even without this arcade. And I do want to just point out briefly that the areas of consensus that we've achieved with HLC are pretty tremendous and really reflect the goals for the Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation for this project. So I really wonder whether we can get any structure here approved at all after listening to the HLC meeting. So if the choice that's before us today is to choose one of these three options, then I would say the smallest one, C, with the architectural modifications proposed by Commissioner Howes. But if it was just a platform, then I think we could achieve some of the purpose and avoid the idea of introducing a new structure into the plaza, which seems to not have unanimous support from HLC.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. It actually echoes my sentiments also. So we have Commissioner McGill. And Commissioner Lodge, your hand is still up. I don't know, did you want to?
Yes,
Okay. It's been up for a while. Go ahead, yes.
Okay, thank you, Chair Sutton. I also agree with the shed roof. I had meant to mention that in my comments, that a combination of this with the size with the shed roof design. I watched the HLC meeting, and I don't think their concern was that there be a structure, as I recall, it was the size and the dominance of the structure. So I think there probably could get some agreement on a much smaller version. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McGill.
Well, I'm largely going to echo what Commissioner Lodge just said. When I've looked at these designs as an attendee in the past, I've been struck by how imposing it is. And I think partially this perspective helps a lot with the news press in the background. Smaller does seem better. I like the shed roof. I do want to flag, I think transparency is actually important from some of the projects we've looked at in Parks and Rec. I do know that there's a concern with having, I guess, what I would call hidden spaces, where places where people can be and behaviors that we don't want can exist. So I like the idea of it being see-through. And while I think we do need more landscaping, we probably need to be careful what kind of landscaping. So thank you.
Commissioner Longstreet.
I agree with Dr. Peterson. Her comments reflect what I believe. In some ways, I think we can add later, but a lot of it's about getting this project done, about making our plaza useful. But the smaller one is, if that's what it takes to get it through, that's what it takes. Honestly, more pleasing, the first design is more pleasing to my eye. I don't know why, but it pleases my view with the wings, the walls coming off the sides. It just seems to be more inclusive, but I'm fine with C, and really am concerned to get this moving.
I think you said, so when you say the first option, that would be option A with.
Option A just pleases my eye.
Okay.
But I can go with C just fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then I will add my comments to that as well. If it gets too small, I think it risks not being a feature at all. And I am actually in favor of there not being an arcade other than having a raised platform space. I think it could be enclosed with or given the screening with landscaping. Would would just be my preference, but I understand it's not the preference of this committee. And I think short of that, then option C with the shed roof and smaller is preferable. So it sounds like we have majority agreement here that we would move forward with option C. And Commissioner House, did you have a further comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make some big picture comments. And at the last HLC meeting, Dr. Peterson commented something to the extent of, let this be the generation that gets something done with this plaza. And I 100% agree with that. And projects like this can become what I call a Christmas tree, where they get weighted down with too many ornaments and they just collapse. So I think we ought to be open to eliminating features if that helps get the thing done. Some things can always be done later, such as this arcade structure. As I said, I'm open to something that's a blend of option A with the shed roof and option C that's the smallest. I don't think that there's a problem of it being too small. I think that with landscaping, it becomes the edge of the plaza that we need. But I'm also okay with just doing nothing there except for landscaping to accomplish that. But I'm open to eliminating things so that we get this project done.
Okay, thank you. And I'll also make an overarching comment that I don't think the goal is to get this project done and then think that we could come back later and get anything else done. This has been a monumental effort to get this far. And I don't have the idea that we could add an arcade later or not. I want to do it right this time. And I want to also get it done, but I don't want to start shedding things if we really believe in them just to get it done, because I believe we will get it done. But I don't think it'll be anytime soon that more is added to it. I mean, that's just my perspective on what it took to get us this far. So, okay. So the next, I think we have consensus on that the smaller option, slant roof, landscaping, like to see that filled out. I think we know what it would look like if it was not there. So that option remains also, but I think we move forward with that. Do you have what you need, Mr. Hess, on that item?
Yes, Madam Chair. Option C with a shed roof, improved landscaping. What we will do is actually, I'm not sure removing parking is feasible, but what we can do is work with the distance between the parking lot and the back of the arcade to really enhance that space from a landscaping standpoint. I hear the transparency and no hidden spaces from Commissioner McGill. We agree completely, and selecting the landscaping will be very important for that. So I think we have what we need. We really appreciate the direction.
Thank you. And then I just want to do a time check here. Okay, we're okay if we spend about 10 minutes on each of the next two items, the quatrefoil, and then I would like a check-in on the grass. So let's go to the quatrefoil water feature. I think many of us watched the HLC meeting, and it was slammed. So I'm not sure. I think it's really important that we as a committee decide if we are committed to the water feature and moving forward, and where we are on it. So do we have comments on that? Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Well, I'll take a stab at it. I appreciate this slide in particular. I think there's been a tremendous misconception. It was originally called a splash pad, which is what you really see in the slide on the left. That's more of a splash pad. And I really hate to separate this from the grass, because as far as I'm concerned, and as far as the committee was concerned early on, we, as Mr. Hess said, we unanimously rejected any turf in the plaza for for the reasons that Mr. Hess showed on the on the slide. The water feature here as shown, I think this is spot on. It provides visual interest. It provides white noise, and it's cooling. It really achieves something that with no turf in the plaza, this is going to be a cooling feature. And I think it's important for people to know that this isn't on all the time. It's on and off, and during colder weather, it will probably not be on. During hotter weather, it will be, so it will be cooling. And it gives it achieves an activation of the plaza. I'm not, we have a picture of a small child here playing in the bubbler, but I can see, someone else an adult having fun with the bubbler. So I'm in total support of this. And I think it helps activate the plaza and provides cooling in the paved space. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wiscombe. And I like the new term, the bubbler. We've gone from splash pad to now bubbler, which is, I think, a more accurate description. And if we want to follow suit with Vice Chair Wiscombe there, talking about the grass check-in with the bubbler feature, because it was because we had committed to not having grass and still wanting to have a cooling effect in the plaza and have something similar to that this feature became proposed. So if you do want to comment on both of them in the same comment, I think that would be helpful also. Did you have more to add to that, Vice Chair Wiscombe, or your hand? Okay.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Yeah, I think the grass, I think we might be able to go so far as to say it really violates our policies and procedures set up by the city. Mr. Hess had that. I don't know if he can put that slide back up, or if Lee can put that slide back up that gave all the, we do have landscaping standards, and we have policies now that and we've asked our community to remove their lawns and plant water-wise gardens. And we've actually paid, our city has actually had a program that's paid people to do this. Not in full, but part of a portion of it. So I really think that we would be sending the wrong message for any proposal that involved grass. And I might like to hear Mr. Hess's comment on if the proposal were submitted for permitting with grass in it. I'm not sure it would go through. I don't know, maybe Mr. Hess has a comment on that based on these policies that we have in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hess, did you want to comment on that at this time?
Yes, Madam Chair, really quickly. Vice Chair Wiscombe, that is my understanding, given that all of the directors and the city administration has made it very clear that they don't support this, that my understanding is that when we submit to community development, that this would be flagged for that.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. And then, so in that context, the quatrefoil herbal was in response to that as something else. So if there are other ideas for cooling of the plaza, this would be the time to mention it, and however you are on that. So Commissioner Longstreet.
I agree with all that's been said. And there is another aspect to it. We pay for all the water we use. And budgetarily, we are not going to be able to pay for grass that isn't, we're having a tough time keeping our turf fields up and going. So there's, so many aspects from setting the standard for our community by not having a large grass area that we are then watering to just the realities of the budget, which isn't getting better and better. So there is no way I could support grass. There's accessibility issues. There's the infrastructure that we want to put in underneath for activities such as Old Spanish Days. So much went into what we discussed about not having grass there. I think it flows better into Casa de la Guerra. I don't see this being a period. I think it was Mr. Thompson who said, you know, grass is a Yankee invention. Casa de la Guerra doesn't have grass. So we're not continuing in a historically correct way if we do that. To me, it doesn't flow. The water feature, I have been an advocate for a long time for that, because the other thing we spent a long time discussing is activating this area to promote the behavior we want in it. You know, there was a lot of talk at HLC about what we don't want. And what we talked about is how to get what we do want. This is a way to bring families down, to activate the area, to make sure we have positive behavior. So that is one of the tenets of park design is design for what you want people to use it for, and make sure that, you know, you make it the space that's attractive for your community. So I support having this design in there all the way. I think a lot of misconceptions were thrown out by the public and by the commission, and it was truly bothered me quite a bit. So I support both the water feature and no grass.
Thank you, Commissioner Longstreet. Very, very helpful, detailed comment. Commissioner Howes.
Okay, well, any of you that watched the last HLC meeting, you will know that I had to leave at 6:30, which was right before comments started. So I did not get to express my opinion on various things, which is probably a good thing, because throughout the whole history of this process, there are arguments that are great on either side. And Commissioner Lenvik said, picture the courthouse lawns and picture De la Guerra Plaza as a paved plaza. Where would you rather sit? And, you know, it seemed, yes, a grass lawn seems nice. He also referred to Milford Wayne Donaldson, the architectural preservationist, and his essay in the Plaza de la Guerra Reconsidered book, Why Gringo Plazas Don't Work. But upon reflection, you know, I'm thinking that, well, that's a convenient excuse for doing nothing. If we can't succeed because we're gringos, then we shouldn't even try. I think we must try. So getting down to these specific elements, and I'm going to kind of tie the grass and the bubbler together, I think my feelings have solidified. I agree that we should not have grass. I would take exception to the argument that our city standards don't allow it. It's grass right now. So by the same argument, well, we need to remove grass in all of the other city parks. So, I mean, if you're replacing grass with grass, I'm not sure that's in violation. But I do feel that the commitment was made to make this into a plaza and not a park. And a plaza is characterized by having paving and not by having grass. There was a well-written letter from landscape architect Bob Cunningham suggesting an alternative turf that would not take as long to recover. But still, you know, I am firm now in my belief that we should get rid of the grass. And I do support the concept of the bubblers, and it's maybe too bad that it started out being called a splash pad, and maybe a lot of people will be disappointed that it's not a splash pad. But I think that it does serve a function in terms of white noise, visual interest, cooling, a focal point, etc. I am strongly opposed to the location that it is currently proposed opposite the stage and the arcade. There are three places that would make sense for it to relate to. One is the stage, one is City Hall, and one is the space between the Bothine building, I think it's called, or McKay building, where the city attorney's offices are, and the Ironworks. You know, it's the back of the three restaurants. I personally think that this bubbler feature should relate to where there will be outdoor dining. That's not going to happen overnight. It takes the right tenants in those spaces, but I think that that is, you know, what I think is going to be one of the most attractive features of this whole plaza will be outdoor dining spreading out from those spaces. And I think that it would be nice if this water feature related to that. It's been pointed out before that that's a problem with archaeological remains, but I've spoken to Mike Imwale, who was one of the authors of one of the earlier reports in that area. And he said, that's just nonsense. That was the old City Hall's basement in that location. So there's nothing of archaeological value in that location. So there really is no reason I can see not to have it relate to that area. And then it will be more centered in the plaza, which just makes a lot more sense to me. Actually, I'm going to tie this in a little bit with the pump room. You know, part of me feels like if we didn't have the bubbler, we wouldn't have to have the pump room. And I agree with the concern about all these little add-ons of restrooms and pump room kind of encroaching on the placita. But yeah, I will say that I will support the water feature. And what I want to say is that this is what I will say at the next HLC meeting, that I agree with this committee on a number of these issues, and I will do my best to sway opinion in that direction. So I'll leave it right there for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Howes. And I do want to, I guess, say something about relying on our subject matter experts on whether there are historic resources there or what they are. And I did notice that at the HLC meeting that there was questioning of post-Hazeltine, and once we've sort of agreed on who we are relying on to tell us about, I mean, this is me speaking, who's telling us about what resources there are or artifacts, I think we have to rely on those. And if there's someone else who wants to submit a report, I mean, I'm not really comfortable saying we should put a feature somewhere because somebody I don't know says that that's bogus and there aren't artifacts. I don't know. That's just sort of a comment, and it sort of was something I thought of at the HLC meeting as well. I mean, who can we rely on if we're asking for those studies? And Mr. Hack.
Chair Snedden, I just would like to just clarify that an archaeological phase 1 and phase 2 have been done on this site. And we have never said that there isn't archaeological resources in the center. What we said is the further you go toward the Casa de la Guerra, the more likely we are to run into them. So that's all that was said. We have not committed that it's quote safer where it is, other than everything that the archaeological phase 1 and 2 are telling us is that the resources are closer to where the flagpoles are currently.
Thank you. So that sounds consistent with both. And then I'll say for my comments about the location of the verbal too. But thank you for your support, Commissioner Howes. And I think if that conversation at the times of HLC meetings is helpful as well as any commissioners and committee members on this committee to speak when it comes before HLC. You're welcome to speak or submit your views. Commissioner Lodge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Of course, I'm a newcomer to all of this, although I've observed the discussion that's been going on since the beginning. And since the beginning, it seemed to me that this particular water feature is out of place and somewhat gimmicky. Well, yes, it will be an attraction to small children and perhaps adults as well. what would be more, I like the quatrefoil, and what would be more appropriate, it seems to me, is this traditional Spanish fountain there, which would provide some of the cooling effect and white noise also, but it wouldn't be a place to play. But it seems to me historically it would be more fitting. But you know, I understand that the committee has spent a long time coming to the conclusion that this is what they prefer, but just wanted to add my comments at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lodge. And just as a comment to that, we did, there were suggestions of a traditional Spanish fountain. And I think while we agreed it would be beautiful, I think we came to the consensus that City Council probably would not approve of a fountain, any new fountain features for the same messaging about water that the grass feature conveys if we were to keep grass. Any comment on grass, Commissioner Lodge?
I understand. Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand where staff is coming from on this, and I think adding grass would have such, or keeping some of the grass, cutting it by 2/3 so that it's a much smaller area, which would leave a much bigger area, since it's all going to be leveled out for activities on the plaza. But it would make it seem much more welcoming. And I would like to see some grass, as Chair Grumbine of HLC said, and referred to the fountain and little bit of grass in the center of El Paseo. You know, and just to get back to a fountain as opposed to what would be required and what would be evaporate from, I understand the city's trying to get away from fountains, and a fountain in El Paseo has plants in it now and no water. It wouldn't use any more water than the currently proposed water feature. And we'd also have to have pumps to recycle the same water and so on. Okay, but those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner McGill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'll start with the grass, because that's, I think, is the lead in. I was actually, quite frankly, shocked to hear that there was so much opposition to removing the grass for all the reasons that have been stated. But I think also there's sort of almost an element of wanting to have the cake and eat it too, given that this really is a plaza. You know, yes, we want it to be attractive to visitors, but it's for residents largely, and a large part of it is 12 months a year activation, group gatherings, political gatherings, festivals, and losing it for 3 months a year for turf revitalization just doesn't make any sense, as in addition to all the other reasons you don't want grass. With the water feature, I've been back and forth as someone looking in from the outside about the water feature. It makes sense if you're going to remove grass to have something that provides cooling, whether it's the quatrefoil and bubbler or a fountain. I could go either way, but I think a water element achieves a large part of what was referred to with the courtyard grass in terms of a cooling element that's attractive for residents and visitors. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McGill. And Commissioner Longstreet, did you have?
Yeah, I did have a comment, because we did discuss fountain at length, and fountains in our community have become attractive nuisances. Aside from water usage, they're difficult to maintain proper use. And so it is another concern that isn't, we just have to factor in what happens in a public space. And I think we would be adding an attractive nuisance with a fountain, besides the fact that we really don't have them left anywhere that aren't planted out these days. I think that down at Sturds Wharf is about it. And I want to also think about when you add that structure in the center, we've kind of avoided that whole thing because of being able to activate the plaza for so many other uses, and putting in that infrastructure that allows it to be a place for, let's say, a Christmas market, as well as Old Spanish Days. You know, we need to be thinking out of the box when we're talking about programming downtown and bringing people in, and really activating our downtown area.
Thank you, Commissioner Longstreet. And Commissioner Dr. Peterson.
Thank you. With the bubbler, I'm ready to let it go. I don't want this to be the deal breaker. I am concerned that it's just not going to get the support that it needs. I think we can have a lovely, functional, beautiful, and attractive plaza without it. And in terms of shade and cooling, you know, we had proposed some really beautiful shade trees with seating around them, and I think that will make it very comfortable. I also think there are a lot of temporary pop-up programming ideas that can activate the plaza and attract the families that the committee is looking to bring in. And regarding the grass, I am ready to double down on the let's not have grass in the plaza. I think that I support the staff's comments in that slide. I hope that we can incorporate that slide into the next HLC presentation. And also, I believe it was Commissioner Lodge's comments about it being sort of ahistorical, or I'm sorry, maybe it was someone else, being sort of ahistorical to have grass near the casa. So I think it can be beautiful, comfortable, and attractive, and inviting, and cool without the bubbler and without grass. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. And Mr. Hess, did you have a comment before I make my final comment? And then I'm sensitive to the time as well. Oh, your hand came down. Okay. So I will say, I mean, I think a lot of what was reflected in the HLC meeting and maybe in some of our comments here, and I certainly, I'll say for myself, I have a lot of nostalgia about the plaza. I spent a lot of time there when it was grass in the 80s, lying in the grass, sitting on the benches, reading books. It was a place I frequented as a teenager, and really spent a lot of time sitting in the grass, being in the grass, and also at the courthouse and in the lawn there as well. And I have nostalgia for it, and I think it's why it's difficult to hold the line and not have grass proposed in the plaza. And some of the comments at the HLC, particularly Anthony Grumbine's comments about, you know, this being the front door to the city and really wanting to have that space be welcoming, but it's lawn and it's turf, and we just the way Mr. Hess laid out our policies as a city and the direction we're trying to go. I don't want to let go of the grass, but I think it is the right thing to do, and I need to support that from this committee, that we're not going to propose grass moving forward. Having said that, if the burbling water feature isn't what is going to create the cooling space, maybe there is an area where there can be the plantings between pavers, not across the whole plaza, but something cooling, or with the landscaping. And I'm going to agree with you, Dr. Peterson, about the trees and the wells to sit around them as being cooling and welcoming as well. So because it's hard to let go of the grass, but I'm committed to letting go of the grass. I think that is what we need to do consistent with our policies. I do want to hold on to the water feature. I think it's one or the other, or something has to be there to make it less sterile as a plaza. So I think you have the comments you need. I think we're hearing some people ready to let go of the water feature. I think it is as it is. Keep moving forward with it. It doesn't require any changes. Might as well leave it in the plan and see if we can get there. I don't want to preemptively, reject it before it moves forward. But I don't see any reason to take it out at this point unless we had something else to create that cooling. And so far we hear about grass, which I don't hear from this committee there's any support for, or at least not consensus support for. So I think that's a really good, healthy check-in that we are not proposing grass as a committee, and we're maybe mixed on the water feature, how far we're willing to push that. But I say let's leave it in there as long as we can. Would be my preference. Anything that maybe has not been included, or Mr. Hess, do you feel you have the direction you need? What I'm hearing is consensus to move forward with the plan as it is.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That is what I'm hearing as well.
And then on the arcade, smaller shed roof, landscaping, something needed there to close that end and be functional, and to work with that.
So I guess my last question is, given the direction that we have for the smaller arcade, shed roof, additional landscaping, massaging the exact location to enhance the landscaping around it, no grass, and moving forward with the water feature. Is there a desire to have an additional meeting between now and when we go back to HLC, or is everyone comfortable with us proceeding to HLC as soon as possible so that we can keep this moving forward?
How does the committee feel? I see a thumbs up. I see a hand from Commissioner Howes and Commissioner Longstreet. Yeah.
I don't know that it would serve any purpose to have another meeting before going back to HLC. The only other option that might be worth considering is another joint meeting with HLC, because I think we accomplished quite a lot and had more of a meeting of the minds that way. Otherwise, we just kind of ping pong back and forth. And so there might be some value in that.
I'd be supportive of that as well. Commissioner Longstreet.
I want to see it move forward. If we have a joint meeting, I would like to propose that Chair Snedden chair the meeting. I felt like the committee wasn't really heard at our joint meeting as much as it should have been. And if it goes forward to an HLC meeting, I would like to see a little bit more give and take with staff, because there were misconceptions that comments kind of snowballed off misconceptions. And I think staff can alleviate it, but they're shut down pretty fast. And so I think it wastes a lot of time when staff can't come back with a clarification and are not recognized on that when it goes to commission deliberation, because it several times I felt it really went off track. So I would like to see a little change in form in how this moves forward, since we're in a real consensus building and then it goes and it seems to hit a wall. So that would be my recommendation.
So I do think a joint meeting could address that, the less formal setting where staff.
I was concerned with the way our joint meeting went before.
Okay.
Okay, and I would like to see it a more level playing field. Let's put it that way.
And Vice Chair Wiscombe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Commissioner Longstreet. I think, I appreciate Commissioner House's comment about having a joint meeting, but I think it should take a different form. I felt like the joint meeting was really an HLC meeting with our committee members semi-participating. And I think perhaps if you were to chair, Madam Chair, chair the joint meeting, that might help, but I'd like to our committee's really done a lot of work over the last 2.5 years. It's been a long time, and it's been a great group. And I think we have a lot of valuable input to give to HLC and to share with HLC. And so I would propose that I think the joint meeting would be great. I'm all in favor of moving this forward. That's my goal. If the joint meeting's going to stall it, then maybe we shouldn't have it, but I think it might be helpful to members of HLC if we do have a joint meeting.
Okay,
Thank you.
And Mr. Hess, where are we on any kind of timeline? Are there only so many times we can go to HLC with a concept plan, or does this do anything to our timing with that if we had a joint meeting ahead of that?
Madam Chair, I don't think this will negatively impact our timeline, since really we don't have a timeline.
Okay.
The challenge with this is that we HLC is the governing body, so there isn't a number of times that we will reach our maximum. It's as long as it takes.
Well, then I would be in favor of a joint meeting. I think our HLC representative is requesting that and recommending that might be helpful. And I think we are so committed in a way to certain features in here that continue to be an issue for HLC. So I think it would be helpful to be able to just talk it through, and in a different format where maybe this committee presents first with our reasoning, and we can work out the structure of that. And I'm definitely hearing the comments that it didn't feel quite balanced. It was more we were there to answer questions than to be able to really sort of pitch ideas. And we can work out the format if we're in agreement that I think it would be a good idea to have a joint meeting. Are you in favor of that, Mr. Hess?
I am absolutely in favor of that. Yes.
Okay. Well, let's do that then, and we can go from there, because I agree that the last meeting there was a lot at the HLC meeting. There was a lot of misinformation, a lot about the grass that couldn't be addressed directly, a lot in the discussion that once we talk about it, people become recommitted to those ideas. So I think it'd be a good opportunity. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do you have any other business before we conclude? I really want to thank this committee. We're coming from all different, representing different aspects of the city. And I think when we come together like this and are unified and really looking out for the city, it's really strong recommendations. I really appreciate this group. Thank you. And with that, we are adjourned.